Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. All right. I am seriously considering fasting until I go to heaven. Um, uh, I yesterday I was upset because I did so well when I was on a fast. I'm on vacation in Las Vegas. See if we can get a good picture of the window. I'm in the bathroom right now. I'm in the hostel, and there's a lot of people here. And when I was fasting, when I got to Las Vegas, I was 20 hours into a fast. I spent the next 10 hours, 30 hours altogether. And during those 10 hours, nothing could bother me. I had roommates who were trying to get on my nerves. You know, I turned the relationship around. I had one roommate who started by almost wanting to pick a fight with me, and later on, I was able to agree with him on a number of things, and that's what happens when I'm on a fast. By the way, I've learned to go to job interviews on the fast. Unfortunately, a lot of first dates involve food, but I usually start the date on the fast at least, and I can usually handle that. But one thing I've learned is that if I have a job interview that needs to revolve around food, I sometimes find some kind of excuse. I'll just say, I have a family reason for needing to fast today. We can eat at a different time. No, I've done that a few times. Usually, most people will not dig too far if you just say family reason. You don't want to go too far into it, um, because I'm Asian, right? A lot of Buddhist religions will fast for family anniversaries, right? I had an interview that was on the anniversary of Eve Curry's passing, and so later on I elaborated on that, and so it was all right. And But I do really well when I'm fasting. Yesterday, I could have gotten into a fight with my roommate, and I didn't. And then I think about the last couple of major altercations I got into in my life, and the only common denominator I could think about for all of those events was either eating or food cravings or the anticipation of eating or something revolving around food. You know, I get into a lot of issues with my roommates, especially I'm getting ready to eat and they're bothering me about something. My last roommate who owned the place, I was living in a three-bedroom house. He owned the place. It was in Tempe. He was easily irritated by seemingly minor things. Uh, Stuff being out of place, you know, uh, I accidentally got into a discussion with one of what had happened was that I had burnt some food again revolving around it. I burnt some food. I had a really old pot, and when I went outside to kind of shake the pot to get the burnt food out of uh, the pot, what had happened was the handle on the old pot finally broke, and the pot went flying and went over the fence to a neighbor's home. It was 9:10 p.m. at night, so I left a note on the neighbor's door. Says, "Sorry about that. If you see a pot in your backyard, sorry." Next day, the neighbor comes over, and I don't think the neighbor's upset or anything. Might have been a little confused about the whole situation, but not upset. But my roommate was so upset, and he doesn't like to think. Well, he drinks a lot. That's probably why he doesn't like to talk things over. He just instantly jumps to conclusions, and he doesn't like to hear out the whole situation either. He just jumps to whatever conclusion in his mind, and he won't listen to anything except for his predetermined conclusion. That's how a lot of arguments went when I was living there. I don't know if anybody here has ever dealt with an alcoholic. Let me know if that's typical behavior because none of my family members drink. I don't deal. I'm not exposed to that a lot, so I didn't know how to deal with that. But do you know what made it all the more impossible to deal with the alcoholic behavior? When I was craving food, when I was eating it, unfortunately, that was a big part of my life at the apartment because think about it. A typical day, I'm at my job, I was dating at the time, and what else? A lot of activities. The only reason I would be in that, aside from sleeping, was during my mealtime. And so every time he complained, it was always while I'm eating. And having to, it's one thing to have to defend yourself when you hear wackiness like that. It's quite another when it's punctuating your delicious food and you have to see. I don't know why humans were born with the same organ to use for speaking and for eating. You would think it would be evolutionary advantageous to be able to do those two things at the same time, right? Imagine you're chasing your food, right? You're hunting, you're gathering, whatever, and you need to warn your tribe about something, right? Why did we evolve to have to put our food down in order to shout out to the rest of our tribe? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Think about it this way, right? Can you imagine if we had to use the same organ to eat and to have sex, right? It would probably be very disadvantageous because in the middle of reproducing, you couldn't eat it, right? That would be hugely distant. That's why we didn't evolve that way, right? Because it would limit our reproduction, it would limit our ability to grow, right? But for some reason, I guess speech came much later in the evolution path, right? I guess that's the problem, right? But anyway, so a lot of my conflicts with I bet if I didn't have to eat during that time, I probably could have turned that roommate situation around. I probably wouldn't have convinced him to quit drinking, but I probably would have been able to work around that, right? After all, the roommate that wanted to pick a fight with you, I don't think he had the best lifestyles, right? I don't know if he drank, but I'm sure he had other lifestyle wackinesses, right? And it didn't get on to me. Okay, that one, and also I had other situations that I learned that part of the reason I don't like the United States is that we treat everything like it's an adversarial relationship. I had a situation at work where I got distracted. I put something in the microwave, and what's really funny is that our workplace microwave is a disaster. There's stuck burnt food everywhere, and I have food allergies, so I had to line the entire microwave with paper towels just to use it. I usually throw it out after I'm done. But one day I microwaved something and I got distracted. One of my students called me, it's an emergency, and I forgot. And one of my office mates was so upset by that. He wasn't upset about the other burnt food in the microwave. He just assumed that he took a picture of that and he sent it around, including to our boss. And I had to apologize and explain that I had food allergies. And my boss didn't think it was a big deal. And why does it have to go like that? Like, can't he just talk to me? He has my phone number. Hey, are you done with the microwave? Right? I think part of it is that he's also an adjunct, and we're vying for the same teaching opportunities, and everything is just so adversarial here in the United States, right? We can't work as a team, and so I've I have a hard time dealing with workplace relationships. You see, when I go out to buy a car or negotiate a lease with like the last place where I lived with the owner, or actually the lease is not a good example because I sometimes still get a connection with it. Or if I go out to buy a gold coin or strategic metals, I treat that as a business, right? I very seldom would even think about befriending anybody on the other side of the table in those interactions, right? Now, I recently met a distant cousin of Eve Curry. She's involved in literature and half Polish. Now, that's a pure friendship, right? I would never treat that as a business, right? But at the workplace or with my roommates, it's kind of in between there, right? That's where I run into most of the drama, right? I have a hard time with those in between kind of relationships, right? But when food is thrown, it's like throwing gasoline on that fire, right? I can't think of too many conflicts I've had that didn't have a nexus to food somewhere in that equation, and that's why I don't know what to do about that. I really despise my food. Fortunately, I get to go on another 20 some hour fast today, and uh, I'll just have to strategically think about when to break that fast. Right, choose a time that I'm not going to run into too many things, and break it in a controlled fashion. Yeah, actually, yesterday I ran into trouble while trying to break it, so have to be in a more controlled fashion at this point. All right, please pray for me. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.